My mom was a single parent, and so she was almost constantly working and almost always tired, so she wasn't the most present parent. But even though I was only 2 years older than my sister, I was headstrong and insisted on acting like the man in the family, putting on a tough face and deciding things like comforting my sister when she saw a nightmare so we wouldn't wake up my mom. All this happened while we were on a shopping trip. I would say it was about 7 and my sister Elise was about 5. She was a talkative child, always demanding someone's attention, but neither my mom nor I noticed she was gone until we got to the checkout. Thinking she had just gotten distracted and wandered off, my mom wasn't too worried and I volunteered to go and pick her up. I walked past the aisles, looking down to see her dark curly hair and pink jumper when I heard muffled crying and a woman trying to silence someone. As I rounded the corner to investigate, I saw something terrifying. The woman crouched down, desperately trying to calm my younger sister down with her hands on her wrists. Seeing me, the woman smiled and tried to shoo me away. She said, "Don't worry, she just fell a little." I distinctly remember the little 7-year-old me straightening up, puffing out my chest to look as strong as possible, with a look that spat out, "That's my baby sister." Her smile disappeared, and she let go of Alice, and I grabbed her and ran forward to where Mom was waiting outside. She didn't look too much of a concerned lady. She must have been exhausted, to be honest, despite the fingernail marks on my sister's hand, and we just went home that day. I'm 21 now, but I still think about that day sometimes, and it always makes me sick to my stomach. So I live near a freeway. I can cross it and go to the shops, and now it's about 10 or 11:30 p.m. and foggy, and I wanted to eat. I decided to go somewhere where I had to cross an overpass or walk almost another mile to get around. At the end of the overpass is also the largest cemetery in my city. So I'm walking and I'm halfway to the bridge and I see a man in all black with a black hood. It's like the person was wearing a hoodie or something and I was just feeling this shit, but I kept going anyway. However, out of nowhere I see this thing jump over the overpass. I screamed, but instead I got phlegm in my scrotum pocket. I seriously cried and ran over there. If this thing had bounced, it would have hit the grass dividing the freeway. But when I got there, I didn't see anything. Nothing at all. I stood and looked and ran across the overpass, and I didn't see anything on the other side either. No knocking, no horn, no screeching tires. I stood there sweating in the 36-degree temperature, panicking. Once I convinced myself that I had just hallucinated, I continued walking. I get my food and walk back, and get to the end of the overpass to walk back, and I'm hit with total dread. It was out of nowhere, and I try to stay calm and listen to my steps on the tarmac, and then I heard, shuffling another person's legs. I turn around and see nothing. I was the only one on the overpass. I keep walking and hear footsteps on the wet asphalt. I stopped and also heard more footsteps. Well, that's all. At this point, I decided to walk at a jogging pace. I'm a good 250 feet from the house, and I move and hear footsteps behind me again. Honestly, I'm about to lose it and end up on the edge of an overpass before it hits my street. There's a big puddle on the corner, and I still can't see anything, but I can hear everything. I stomp into a puddle and run across the street, and then I hear a splash in the puddle and footsteps too. At this point, I'm outside my house, and I'm still turning around, and I keep seeing nothing. I cross the road, and still hear my footsteps, and other people's footsteps. I stepped out into the driveway and yelled, "You're not allowed in here!" And immediately the footsteps stopped. The worst part of it all was that I was fumbling for my keys with frozen hands and trying to unlock the door, thinking I was going to get killed or something. I have no idea what I faced that night, but it was horrible. It happened a little over 10 years ago when I was living in an off-campus apartment at the Art Institute. Good prices, but the caveat is that one person in the apartment must be enrolled in school. My girlfriend at the time, Emily, also lived in the same apartment complex. There were lots of parties. Everyone was a student, and because it was off campus, things tended to get a little out of hand. It was still pretentious, but a pretty wild activity at times, if you catch my drift. I happened to be over her house for a few hours, which was probably about a 20-second walk from my apartment. I knew my roommate and my friend Brendan were hanging out at my house while I was at Emily's, and I was barely awake and about to fall asleep in her room when I heard a knock on her door. I assumed that Brandon was just trying to mess with me, probably because he was bored and there were no parties that night. Well, I headed for the door in my cubicles with 100% certainty that it was him. I would say it was around midnight or so, but somehow, before touching the handle, I paused for no reason. It was just a strange feeling. I look into the peephole, and in the yellow light, I see this man-boy with a buzzing head and a stained white t-shirt. So I do what I usually do and just stand there in silence until he leaves, right? But I didn't realize that the door was unlocked. And I start to hear a guy turn the handle to open the fucking door, and as it slowly opens, I open it all the way. As far as I could do it, I thought, what do you need? And he's just standing there, pacing back and forth and muttering, oh, and so at home. Channeling some other identity, I simply straighten my back and think in a deep voice of someone telling a demon that they are not welcome in their home. I'm coming. You're wrong, my friend. You always know shit's about to happen when a buddy gets dumped, right? Well, he drops the act and his face completely changes to a dark meth look and he starts smiling and says, "Oh yeah, are you sure?" At this point, I'm just walking out of here and slamming the door. D-lock it. I called my friend Brandon. He's a really big guy. And he started dragging his ass out of my apartment and kind of running around the complex trying to find the guy, who turned out to be two guys, one of whom must have been hiding during the exchange. They scrambled up and either hid or just dragged him out of there. But I still sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had just rolled over in bed that night and not answered the door. Yesterday, as usual, I took the dog to the park. It was a cold but sunny day, so when I arrived, the parking lot was about half full. However, everyone seemed to be leaving. And as we walked towards the wooded part of the park, I noticed a guy dressed in all black with big sunglasses and a huge scarf covering his face. It gave me goosebumps, but I just ignored him. When we were halfway through the park, I heard a man yelling and saw no one, but my dog stood very alert and growled. I turn around and the man I saw earlier is standing right behind me. He says, "You stupid fucking bitch." And I say, "Sorry?" And he says, "Move your damn car." And I say, "Mine?" And he says, "Yeah, you stupid fucking bitch, move your fucking car." And I think, well, is there something wrong with that? And then he says, "You parked too close to me, and there's an empty parking lot next to me." At this point, I'm completely confused, and frankly a little scared. I told him it wasn't empty when I got there, but I was happy to move it anyway, because I didn't want to annoy him more than he already was. He followed me and walked behind me, muttering curses and insults. And then he said, "You are so lucky that I found you. I have a crowbar in my car, and I was going to break your windows and slash your tires, and then I was going to find you and smash your fucking head in. But today I have a good day. I'm in a very good mood. It's just stupid bitches like you who ruin everything." At this point, I had a mace in one hand and a knife in the other, and we kept walking towards the parking lot. But he got angrier, and at one point he yelled, "Aren't you going to apologize?" I told him I was so sorry, and that I hoped he had a better day, and he said, "Better day? I'm having a great day. You're alive, aren't you?" Well, I started walking faster, and so did he. I did a full sprint to my car, and the guy just stopped and looked at me laughing. He also started throwing sticks and rocks at my car, laughing as I drove away. Obviously, I filed a police report, but I don't know if he was trying to scare me or what. But I hope he doesn't actually hurt anyone in the future. Because man, what a psycho. It was 2009, I was 15 and starting my first year of high school. The first 2 months were great, meeting new people, seeing friends from high school, and just settling in. But one day I was drawing a picture on a binder and having fun, and a girl from my math class appeared at my desk. She seemed interested in my works and introduced herself. Pam was unusually short for her age and had greasy curly hair, acne on her face and chest, orange teeth, and a strange look. She didn't look at me or around me. She looked through me, as it were. I ignored the feeling of anxiety in her gaze and thought it was just me being nervous about meeting someone new. I was quiet and insecure then. I usually hung out with nerds and geeks, so I felt more social and accepted. I introduced myself to her and asked if she liked art. She said, "I love art and I draw too." She said this while maintaining intrusive eye contact, mind you. I said, "Oh, that's cool. Maybe you can show me your art someday." She kept looking me in the eyes as if she was waiting for me to say something else. And I just looked awkwardly at my binder and continued to draw. She seemed to get the point and walked away. Pam returned about 10 minutes later with a certain piece of art and placed it on my binder. It was a shaky line with no marks, and it was my drawing from a week ago. Apparently she somehow got it out of my backpack, outlined it, and just sloppily colored it with a Sharpie or something. Hey, that's... Wait. I said that while checking my backpack. And yes, my drawing was stolen. Obviously, I immediately got angry and said that you stole it from me. I said that too when I was crumpling the paper. I had a hot-tempered, childish temper then. She said, no, it's mine, with a blank look on her face. She snatched the crumpled drawing from me and ran back to her desk. She didn't look embarrassed. She didn't look angry. She just smiled and looked at me for the rest of the class. At first I thought maybe I was just overreacting, that I was just making an idiot of myself as the whole class was watching. But then I realized Pam was enjoying this drama. And after that, I became her target for the rest of the year. Apparently, I avoided her like the plague for the next month or so. She was not normal and she scared me. But that didn't stop her from approaching me. I noticed that every week or so my drawings would disappear as well. My friends called her a thief and a snitch, and somehow she hurt them. At one point, she actually lured my best friend into a one-on-one with her. She claimed she was returning the drawings and didn't want me to see them, and my best friend went to get the drawings, and Pam just punched her in the nose. My best friend was obviously shocked, and she ran to the office to tell an adult what happened, but it wasn't on camera. They also claimed that Pam was a sweet girl who would never hurt anyone. However, there are two things here. Pam obviously made an effort to get on the good side of any authority figure, and she lured my friend into the girls' locker room, knowing there were no cameras. It scared all my friends, and I was scared too, but that fear eventually turned to anger. I mean, who did she think she was? No one even thought she would go this far either, but man, it got a lot worse. So one day I met her and told her that if she touches one of my friends again, I will follow her home and spank her ass. She seemed to enjoy the threats as well, and she smiled, showing her nasty teeth, her breath smelling like a bloody carcass. And then she said, "Don't threaten me to have a good time." I squeeze out a giggle. Any adult I told this to would also ignore me. My parents were too busy fighting each other to listen, and the school staff just didn't care about the drama. The only ones I could trust were those directly involved and my brothers. No one could do anything without evidence, and Pam was, to be honest, very sneaky. I was at a loss. I was furious, and frankly, I wanted revenge. Pam showed up the next day with a picture of me and my two brothers at the Detroit Zoo. She showed it to other students and claimed that the man in the photo was her boyfriend, my older brother. She went into great detail about how she had sex with him 3 times a day, and that my brother and I were just children he was babysitting in the photo. And at that moment, she lost me mentally. How did she even get that picture? It was my locker. She somehow obviously found out about my combination, and I felt quite exposed and small at that moment. Finally, the most disturbing thing she did, but unfortunately not the least, she decided she wanted to force me to turn off. One day during lunch, she went into the bathroom and injured herself, choking on the straps on her back, banging her head on the hand dryer, banging against the walls, and I only knew this because a girl in my English class witnessed it all. She even asked Pam if she was okay, and Pam replied, "I'm fine. Why do you ask?" As if she didn't just rush at sharp corners or something. The witness helped, and 2 school guards took me out of the classroom and interrogated me for an hour. They asked me where I was at dinner, and if I was sure I wasn't lying, and they asked me if I had an abusive family and all that. I rolled my eyes after being told I was a liar, and I just called my brother. He came in half an hour later and told them what Pam had been doing and that they could lose their jobs for questioning like that. At this point, they seemed to listen to him because the headmaster was his old science teacher, and they actually got along really well. And thank God for small towns, right? So I managed to call 3 witnesses, and I chose the girl from my English class who saw Pam mutilate herself in the bathroom. I chose my best friend who got punched in the face, and I chose the real teacher who saw Pam take stuff out of my backpack. Pam claimed I borrowed her books and she took them back. I was in the bathroom at the time. With all this evidence, they had no choice but to search Pam's locker, and what they found I will never forget. They found pictures of me and my family, they found my schedule, and just an incredible amount of pictures I took. It was like she had a shrine and she wanted to be me. I was horrified. They asked me if we were in a relationship or something, and I said no, and that I was straight. She actually failed her art class too because she used all my art for her grades. She was suspended and seemed to disappear after being caught. Honestly, I don't blame her. The whole school was talking about it. I even got a few apologies from Pam's little circle, and they told me they were too scared to do anything about it, and that she would be showing up at their houses randomly after school. She had so many people twirling her nasty pinkies around, and I got the feeling that something terrible had happened to Pam as a child, and that's why she was the way she was. But very disturbingly, the last I heard of her, she pushed her grandmother down the stairs and left her there until the police arrived. A concerned elderly neighbor is believed to have heard screams in the normally quiet home and called the police. I don't know what's wrong with Pam, and I don't know why she did what she did, but Pam, please stay away from me. This happened a few weeks ago, and I'm still a little shaken up about it. So, my husband and I like to go on long drives in the desert with the dog. We live near Las Vegas and are fortunate to live in a city with plenty of beautiful areas to stargaze or use a telescope. My husband just got one for his birthday in October, so he was excited to try it and all. We pulled up in our Kia to a popular lookout, and he pulled out a telescope. He showed me a bunch of constellations, and we even saw a shooting star. The dog was also sitting in the car with 2 windows down at the time, and my dog is just a bitch. They weren't kidding when they called females that too. She's an American cattle, and she saved my ass from a home invasion before. She protects both me and her father. Anyway, hubby had to pee and told me to wait for him in the car. So I went in and locked the door while browsing Reddit. I hear gravel moving, and I think it's my hubby. I notice it was fast, and all of a sudden my dog goes crazy. He's growling, barking, so I turn around and see a dude who's not my husband. The idiot made a big mistake. Cough, he stuck his hand in an open window with a 63-pound rabid dog. She grabbed his arm, and so he just screams. I scream, and my husband screams, runs to us with his pants half pulled up. The dog lets go, and the guy takes off, and I call the police. My husband tries to chase the guy, but he's 6'3" and 280 pounds, and the guy was fast. Anyway, eventually the cops show up and tell us they'll be looking for him. But so maybe stay out of the area tonight. The policemen in our city are just stupid. Anyway, the doggy got a Dairy Queen cup that night, and we're very grateful. Last weekend I went on a date with an old school friend and got dropped home around 11:30 p.m. I live in a 2-story house just outside the city in a small residential area, and usually at this time the streets are empty and pretty quiet. I went inside through the front door and started up the stairs, and I was 3 or 4 steps from the top of the stairwell when I saw a man I had never seen before sitting on the floor with his back against the door of my apartment and looking down to the fact that at first I thought it was a phone, but oh well, as is actually the first-class carriage he's playing with. I was amazed and quietly asked if he could move so I could walk inside, but he didn't even acknowledge my existence. I quietly went down the stairs and knocked on the door of one of the tenants, but got no answer. I tried on 3 more when someone finally came to their senses. I told him about the horrible thing he had done with the cutter, and he agreed to help me and call the police if anything escalated, or if the person refused to leave or anything. We both went up the stairs, and the guy was still sitting there fiddling with his box cutter while I stood and watched as the other tenant demanded he get out of the way. Again, no answer, not even a change in expression. I went downstairs and dialed the number of the nearest apartment, and they were going to send a soldier there as soon as they could. After sitting outside for a few minutes and continuing to talk to the dispatcher, the man apparently finally realized he wasn't expected, and I saw him walk past me out of the apartment building and out into the street before simply disappearing into the distance. When the police arrived, they took statements from me and the other tenant, while another of their units drove around to try and find the man, which they did. However, since he hadn't actually broken any laws, they couldn't take any action against him, but assured us that he would be charged with trespassing if he ever returned. I don't know what the guy was doing, just sitting in front of my door playing with a box cutter, but it was very disturbing. It happened many years ago, shortly after moving into a new house with my parents. I was about 10 years old at the time, I would say. My room had one large sliding glass window that overlooked the steps leading up to our front door, and being on a hilly driveway in a remote part of town, we never locked the door or closed the windows unless we turned on the heater. The house needed a little work, I must admit, and one of the downsides was that every now and then the screen from my window would fall out due to the wind. Well, not a big deal, I guess. I'd wake up, tuck it back in, and go back to sleep anyway. One night, a couple of weeks after moving, I went to bed after watching a movie with my parents and woke up to my screen falling out again. No big deal, but I was really tired and half asleep, so I decided to just go back to bed and deal with it later. I doze off to be woken up again by a man's voice. Hey, wake up, you little shit. I'm still half asleep. I opened my eyes to see a dark figure leaning against my bedroom window, trying to get my attention. Being young and barely awake, I immediately assumed it was my dad playing some weird joke on me, and I told him go away. I was trying to sleep and thought nothing of it. I heard something like okay, and then a figure came down the steps and away from the window. After a few minutes, I try to go back to sleep, and I get up and go down the hall and ask my father why he did that. To discover he's fast asleep, and it's definitely not him. Apparently the police were called. They searched the area but found no one there. A month or so passed before the second incident happened, and this time I fell asleep with the lights on and the windows closed, and was woken up by a knock on the window. After what happened the first time, I immediately woke up to find a bald man I didn't recognize knocking on my window and asking me to open it for him. This time I started yelling at my dad, and as soon as the man in the window realized what I was doing, he ran down the steps and away from my house. They called the police again, but they never found the guy. After that, I slept for a long time with the windows and blinds closed. My girlfriend and I took time to travel the world. We've been to some incredible places and met some really interesting people. But our most interesting story is probably this one. Like I said, we've been around everything. Myanmar, Bolivia, Mexico, and many places that have a dangerous reputation. However, we're both pretty good at reading people and staying out of trouble, so we've never had any serious incidents. We were also on a pretty tight budget at this stage of our trip, as we had recently been to Japan and wanted to relax a bit before finding work in Vietnam. We decided to volunteer on a Cambodian island. It's a bit of a luxury island full of resorts that we wouldn't normally be able to afford to stay at, so it seemed like a pretty good gig. I worked behind the bar at this resort, and my girlfriend worked in the restaurant. In return, we slept in the hostel and got free meals and all that. The manager told me that because I worked at the bar and was Scottish, that an Englishman who lived on the island would most likely come to me, and that his name was Dog. It didn't take long either. A rather old guy who was in his 50s, early 60s, walked into the bar. He was quite tall and still of strong build, and was accompanied by a huge Rottweiler, who he quickly told me was also called Dog. Well, right before I was supposed to start kindergarten, my mom remarried my stepdad, and we moved to a little house in the middle of nowhere, Alabama, about 30 miles outside of Birmingham. It was in a good school district and close to my stepdad's family, who would be helping out with my brand new little sister. It was actually a very exciting time for my younger sister and I, and we finally had cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandparents that we always see instead of going to New England or Florida for the holidays only once or twice a year. We didn't even care that they were all family. We were just happy to be around other people. The cousins we saw the most were Brady and Micah. Their mom and our mom worked odd jobs to make ends meet and helped each other with childcare, while my stepdad worked as a truck driver and my Uncle Randy worked as an ambulance driver. So our house was amazing. We lived in a small 2-bedroom house that was actually almost right behind a big old farmhouse that no one lived in. Whenever Brady and Michael came to visit, we always went through the house and always wondered why it was still listed as a house since no one lived there. Beds were made in the bedrooms. There have been a couple of plates sitting in the kitchen sink for the past few years, It was like someone just left for work and never came home. So after a whole day of playing around the house, I found a plate in the kitchen that I thought was very pretty. I knew we were going to visit my grandparents in Florida for the summer and thought this would make a great gift for my grandmother, who collects South Bell plates. I took it home, and my mom helped me clean it and prepare it that night before sending me to bed. After Mom put me to bed, she went about her nightly routine of smoking a cigarette, throwing out the ashtray, sweeping the porch before locking it, and then watching the nightly news herself before bed. While she was lying in bed, she constantly smelled a burning cigarette, but she couldn't figure out why, and even got up to check the trash to make sure her last one wasn't still burning, and it wasn't, so she went back to bed. She's almost asleep, sure the smell just stuck in her nose, when the light comes on in her room. She turns to get out of bed and is facing me, standing by her bed, clutching my blanket and crying. She asks me why I turned on the light, and I just burst into tears and can barely get the words out. I say that I did not turn on any light, not even in our room and in the living room. Caroline did it. I told her to stop and turn off the light again, but she just laughed at me. My mom was very confused and asked who Caroline was. I explained that Caroline was my friend. She usually just turns the lights on at night, and her house next door didn't have lights until she was 6, and neither did I, and she loves to play with them. But when I tell her to stop and go home to sleep, she turns off the light and leaves. But tonight she turned on all the lights, and when I told her to stop, she laughed at me and went into our closet instead of going home. And now she doesn't want to leave, even though I want to, and she made fun of me. Mom got out of bed and picked me up, and as she carried me back to my room, she quickly discovered that every light, every lamp, every light fixture on the ceiling, even the chain lamp by the pool under the kitchen counter, they were all on. She took me to my room and put me to bed and checked the closet to make sure Caroline wasn't there, and turned off the bedroom light so my sisters wouldn't wake up. She went into the hall and reached for the switch, but before she could even touch it, all the lights in the house went out. Mom was convinced we had lost power, so she flipped the light switch to check, and the hall light came back on as usual. Strange as it was, she simply answered the electrical fault and went back to bed. We had a bit of a laugh, making fun of each other, and he made fun of me for being Scottish, and I made fun of him being called dog and being English standard British nonsense. I also noticed that he always wore women's wellies with the words "Dogs Offshore Bar" and a picture of his dog, a Rottweiler. I learned more about the dog man. He used to work in construction and offshore like me, so we had a lot to talk about, and plenty of opportunities to talk too, as he usually arrived for his first beer at 7 a.m. He was clearly an alcoholic, but he never struck me as a bad person to begin with, just a sad, complicated person, like when you're talking to someone who's homeless or something. Anyone who has ever been to Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, or any Southeast Asian country will understand how rare it is to see a dog that isn't some kind of street mongrel or small pet. But his huge dog will stand out even in Europe. Even for a Rottweiler, it was massive. He was really muscular with a metal chin to give some semblance of control to begin with. I also really like dogs, so I was very interested in what this huge dog was doing on the island and always made sure there was some water for him. He was friendly enough but never left his owner and seemed to be a working dog in terms of his intensity. It was obviously a guard dog. It turns out that this dog was actually a Finnish drug dealer's dog, and this dog, a man, bought it. He told me that the dog had a command to attack, and he maintained it by often using it on other island dogs. He told me that several dogs had died this way. I didn't believe it at first, but there was an island dog that the manager often left food for, and that dog usually came to the bar when the monster dog was not around. But that night he was apparently hungry enough to dare, and the dog hissed a command, and the Rottweiler charged toward the island dog, knocking over chairs and all until he was called back. It was actually pretty scary. One night I was sitting at a bar just talking to Dog about this job I'm about to take at a digital marketing company. At the time, I was negotiating with the CEO of that company. It was a digital marketing job where I worked from home or in coffee shops updating and improving websites. He said it sounded fake, and that the company was most likely some kind of scam to get my bank details. I told him it was a real company, and that I had Googled it. He was very drunk at this point and the restaurant was closed, so my girlfriend joined us and we all drank beer at the bar. He told my girlfriend that I believe everything I read on the internet and that I shouldn't. He said people post all kinds of made-up crap there. I asked what he meant and he said never Google me. So I was thinking, how can I Google you? I mean, your name is Dog. If I Googled you, I'd just see a picture of an Alsatian or something. But then I remembered those tops he was wearing, Dog's Offshore Bar. I told him I would Google you, laughing. But he was very annoyed by it. And at this point, other than owning a dog with a gun, I thought he was pretty harmless. But boy was I wrong. I started reading out loud the interesting things I learned about his bar and the stories associated with it. Of particular interest was the criminal record. The jokes and laughter stopped and I quickly stopped reading aloud. I quickly looked at my girlfriend and saw the smile leave her face as she realized we were drinking with a killer. Turns out this guy killed his Thai wife and was then briefly jailed before being released. You can post bail for murder in Thailand and then fled the country before the trial. He stabbed her, and his alibi to the police was that he couldn't have killed her because he was fucking a lady on the beach at the time. He told us that he was framed and that his wife's ex-husband was in the police, and he killed her for going on and all that. As she lay in bed, the cigarette smell returned, and she sat up trying to remember if she had smelled it while she was talking to me, or if she was too preoccupied and scared to notice. As she tried to remember, she heard the screen door to the back porch open and close again. Of course, she knew she'd locked it before she went to bed, so she wasted no time picking up the phone and calling Uncle Randy, because this was before cell phones were common, and my stepfather wouldn't have been able to get from Arkansas back to Alabama in any time, at least for the circumstances. So for 12 minutes, my mom just sat frozen in her bed, afraid to move, listening for any sign of an intruder or that any of the three of us were awake. Then she heard a car pull into the driveway, followed by Randy banging on the screen door and yelling her name. She ran into the kitchen and opened the back door, turned on the back porch light and immediately saw it. Between her and Randy, there were about 20 burnt butts and cigarette ash, just strewn across the floor she had just mopped an hour ago and the locked door screen. Last year, I went out of state for my freshman year of college to a school in Indiana. I made many friendships in my first week, and one of them was with a boy who ended up being my stalker. He was pretty normal at first, and I genuinely enjoyed his company as well as his roommates, and we became quite close, spending a lot of time together. I soon became friends with other people, and he became part of my group of friends. After about a month of knowing him, I started to feel that he liked me more than a friend. I still acted normal around him because I didn't want to draw attention to it because the feeling wasn't mutual, and I just didn't want to ruin our friendship. One night, about 3 months into school, everything changed. That night all my friends came over to my dorm room, which was a double at the time, and I was occupying it by myself to have a drink before they went to a party. I told my friends they could drink in my room, but I didn't want to go out because I was so upset about the hurricane that hitting my hometown in Florida. All my friends were supportive of it, except my future stalker. The whole time he was in my room, he made jokes about how dramatic I was, and even when everyone told him to stop, he just wouldn't give up. Finally, everyone was ready to leave to go to the party, and my stalker was the last to leave my room. Before he leaves, he tells me that he cares about me, and that if I change my mind and decide to go out, or if I need anything, I should text him. Which I thought was strange given his previous behavior, but I assumed he had come to his senses and was trying to be a good friend. A couple of hours after my friends left, I get a text from another friend telling me to come help our one friend who was too drunk and throwing up, so I changed and went to her building. When I arrived, I found out that she was fine now and they put her to bed. I leave their building and cry myself about what is happening at home on the steps. I get a text from my stalker asking if I've changed my mind, and at this point I feel sad and think if I go with them and maybe have a few drinks, I'll feel better. I tell him where I am and ask if the group wants to meet, and he says they will, but one comes. He suggested we hang out in my room, but I told him I wanted to go and see the band. He didn't seem happy about it either, but I call one of my friends to find out where they are, and we go to another dorm building where they were drinking. Apparently the party was crashed, so they just left. When we go inside, It's hard to tell what floor they're on and what room they're in. My stalker is clearly drunk at this moment and pushes me into one of the adjacent rooms, which is empty. He starts making fun of me again for being upset and gets really, annoying. I push him away from me and tell him to stop. Finally, we find one of our friends, and this friend tells us we can meet him in his room and he has alcohol. My stalker suggests we just go to his room because he's fighting with one of the guys and doesn't want to see him, and I believe that and agree. When we get to his room, we're greeted by his roommate and a bunch of his roommate's friends. My stalker grabs a backpack of booze and says we should just go to my room and our group of friends can meet us so we can do that too. My dorm had 2 beds, and my stalker sits on the one I sleep on, so I decided to sit on the other one. He puts on a movie, and at first everything is fine. I immediately started writing to my one friend, in whose room everyone was, and ordered him to bring our friends to my room. But at this point, all my friends are drunk, and everyone I wrote to didn't make any sense. My stalker then gets into bed with me and lays down next to me. I immediately feel uncomfortable and start quickly texting my friends telling them that so-and-so is acting weird and that they need to come over now. He sees that I am on the phone a lot, and so my stalker takes my phone away and tells me that I need to rest for 10 minutes. At this point, he also gets really annoying and suggests we try this trick on my jewel, where he blows it into my mouth, which I refuse. I tell him it's been 10 minutes and that he should return the phone to me, but he denies knowing what I'm talking about. I get up and move to the other bed as I feel uncomfortable, and he gets up and moves too. I sit at the very end of the bed across from him, and this time I demand the phone. He continues to fool around and instead comes closer to me and tries to playfully touch me. Well, I've had enough, and I tell him that he needs to give me my phone right now and that it's not funny anymore. He tells me that he needs to go to the toilet now. While he's in the bathroom, I grab my laptop and text all my friends to come to my room ASAP and tell them he's really creepy and I need their help. As soon as he comes back, he immediately tells me that he wants to be on the same level as me and that he thinks we should hook up. I kept making it clear that I didn't want it, and I thought he would be able to read my body language and the situation and realize that I was clearly uncomfortable. I tell him no, and that I just want to be his friend and not ruin the friendship, but he doesn't listen. He comes up to me and starts grabbing me playfully, and when I push him away and tell him to stop, he pushes me onto the bed and tries to climb over me. He grabs my legs and pulls me to him. Luckily, I was sober and was able to push him off me, get up, and just run out into the hallway. He won't leave my room and starts insulting me and telling me that he never wanted to be my friend and only wanted to sleep with me and that boys and girls can never be friends. It always has to lead to something bigger. He then says that he will never date me, and that I am too emotionally unstable for him, and a host of other insults. One thing he said that particularly scares me is that he was raised to take what he wants no matter what, defending his actions. I don't know what to do, and just start crying and yelling at him to leave my room. He refuses, and then makes fun of me for crying. At this point, he still has my phone and won't give it back or leave it. I threaten to call the campus police on him if he doesn't leave, and he finally agrees. After that night, he texted me every day for a week trying to talk to me, and one of my friends told me to listen to what he had to say, He eventually confessed his love to me and told me that he still didn't think we could be just friends, even after I said several times that that was all we could be. And in the end, I told him I think we should just stop talking. All my friends knew what happened and dumped him at that point, and he spent months trying to talk to me and honestly became completely obsessed. I nodded my head at everything he said and tried my best to show that I agreed with him, while making sure that the machete I used to open the cocktail coconuts was within easy reach should his beast be given any commands, words. He told us about how hard it was to be one of the few white guys in a Thai prison, how he had to attack the guards to get into solitary confinement, and they beat him mercilessly. He told us that they left the shins in his room and put them in the yard with pedophiles for him to kill. He also told us that he killed before he went to prison, and that he killed when he was inside, but he did not kill his wife. His wife was apparently a Thai prostitute, whom he met while ferrying women from Thailand to Singapore on his boat. The same one he used to escape from Thailand after his arrest, and set up his own bar, Dogs Offshore Bar, with the slogan, "Dogs welcome, wives must be kept on leashes or under control." Well, we both acted like we believed him, and eventually he left. However, I waited by the door all night for him and his dog to just come get us. I even put a trash can next to the door for anyone who came in to knock it over so we had a chance to react. In fact, I almost attacked my friend when he entered. I was pretty screwed. After that, we quickly decided to leave and only saw the dog again. My girlfriend was opening a jar of coconut milk for curry, and he came over and jokingly asked if she needed a knife and patted his back pocket. The guy is known as Mick the Pom, or Mick the Dog, if you want to Google it. If you Google Dogs Offshore Bar, you will see that I did too. He lived in a tent on an island and his dog watched over him while he slept. And I'm not sure if he's still there, but man, talking to a killer was terrifying. I started modeling at the age of 13. I did pretty well, but to be honest, I hated the business. They were just very strict about my weight. I mean, I couldn't get over 100 pounds or I would lose my contracts. I couldn't dye my hair or get piercings without permission, and they would check me often to make sure I wasn't going against their wishes. But fast forward 2 years, even though I'm 15. I once received an email from a fitness photographer. It's not uncommon for me to get random emails because my agency would release my email as soon as they booked me something. That was about 12 years ago too, and I naively didn't worry much about anything back then. You know the usual teenage mentality that nothing will ever get me. In an email, the photographer told me that he would like to do the shoot, and with the compensation he promised me, I would make more money than on other shoots. So obviously, because of the money, I emailed him and said yes, I would be interested. And after that, he emailed me back saying he needed sample photos of my calves, feet, back, and chest to make sure I had the look he wanted. I was a bit wary, I must admit, but I thought he was offering me a lot of money, and I should probably do what he was asking, or he would find someone else. This is exactly what he wanted. He wanted me to feel the pressure to send him pictures, and I felt the pressure. Of course, I had it in my head that I shouldn't do it, but the money was very good. So I sent the clothed photos, and he said he can't tell my correct size, and I need to send him nude photos. Obviously, I refused, and told him that I would be willing to set up a meeting, and his assistant could take the measurements, but I would not send nude photos over the internet. He made an appointment but canceled at the last minute, and within weeks, he was in the news. Apparently, he got busted for child pornography, and surprisingly, he wasn't a fitness photographer. Who knows what would have happened to me if I had actually gone to meet him. I never found out how he even got my email because my agency said they never spoke to the guy. My parents divorced when I was very young. I remember after the divorce, they both lived in apartments in Middle Tennessee. I still hung out with his roommates, but I only went to their room when he wasn't there. On the few occasions he did stop by, he would later write me paragraphs about how immature I was for ignoring him. Finally, I said we could be polite and just be familiar to be nice. But this led to him getting really mad at me for still acting awkward around him and just not wanting to hang out with him. At this point, every time I saw him, he just blew up my phone and texted me nonstop about how I'm fake about him and that I need to get over myself, and eventually I just blocked him. After that, he got really angry. He would appear where I was all the time and just stare at me. His roommates told me he talked about me every night, mostly for the rest of the school year. He tried to ask him about what I do and who I date and all that. He also kept coming up to my close girlfriends and asking what he could do to fix things with me. He tried to fight a guy who said he would like to take me out too. A few months after the incident, he also came up with an excuse to approach me. He lived on the same floor as me for almost a day. He started talking to me in the hallways, offered me these things, and even bought me a Christmas present once. In the last few months of school, he has been telling his roommate that his goal is to sleep with me before graduation, and that he thinks I want him, and I'm just playing games with him. Trust me, I don't mean to, or make it seem that way. The only way I feel about him is utter disgust. Even during the summer, he also texted his roommate about me. All my friends tell me he's stalking me and agree that the way I'm acting is in no way worthy of his attention. I'm going back to school in mid-August, and he'll be there, and he'll be living in a fraternity next year, so I don't have to worry about him being on my floor, but this whole situation still worries me. I think there is something emotionally or mentally wrong with him, and not just because of the way he treated me, but in general. I don't want anything to happen to me or anyone else, and I think I have to do something about it. Looking back on that night, I would say that his behavior and what he said were very offensive, and that people who think that if I want something, I have to take it no matter what, are probably more at risk of being sexually assaulted. Violence. What do you think I should do? Do you think I should be worried, or should I just let it go? Let me know in the comments below. My boyfriend and I went on vacation to Sedona, Arizona. Not much to do at night, so we bought movie tickets and went to refuel before the movie. I was smoking a cigarette when we pulled into the station, so I got out and sat down away from the pump to finish. My homeless man slowly made his way towards me as soon as I sat down, and something about him just didn't seem right. When he got close enough to me and I knew he was probably going to say something, I put the cigarette down and walked to my boyfriend's car. The man raised his hands in prayer and I told him, "I have no money, I have nothing on me, I'm sorry," and tried to leave again. But he stopped me and said, "Wait, no, I don't want money. Please just listen to me, you need to go to the bathroom, I'm saving your life." Well, I ignored him and continued walking really fast to where my boyfriend was filling up gas, and the man was still following me. I kept saying, "Please leave me alone," and finally my boyfriend heard me and saw a boyfriend. When the guy came up to my boyfriend who was filling his tank, he started yelling at me as well. He said, "Why the hell would you drop that girl off? What nationality are you? I'm trying to save her life." My boyfriend has a short temper, so he got in the man's face and told him to just leave and that he was going to call the police. Then the man clenched his fists, stuck out his chest, and got in my boyfriend's face as if he was going to fight him. I held out my hand and asked him to leave us alone, because there was no point in fighting him. Fortunately, the man left, but my boyfriend was very angry and yelled at him. He dumped the gas and drove to the park in front of the station to report the situation. The man put his things on the side of the gas station, and when he saw us parked, he started yelling at us again and looking at me while he rubbed himself and told me what I should do to him. It was obviously very, very uncomfortable for me, and my boyfriend tried to get out of the car, but then the man pulled out a pocket knife. He did not come to us with it, but played with it in a mocking manner. I told my boyfriend to just get in and drive off because I didn't want him to slash our tires and get us stuck, since no tire rental place is open late in Little Sedona. He listened to me and we drove back to the theater. Ended up returning the tickets and going to the gas station to report back in a couple of minutes. We found out that the cops conveniently pulled up right after we left and the man just tried to fight them off, so he was arrested and taken away. Thanks karma, but to be honest, I often wonder what would happen to me if I went into the bathroom with this guy. So I don't live in the greatest neighborhood or the nicest apartment, so I'm always checking my neighborhood when I'm out and about. Nothing crazy, just being aware of what's going on around me. That being said, the other night I decided that the mountain of dirty clothes populating my closet was bordering on disgusting, and it was time to tackle one of my most favorite things to do: laundry. I don't mind doing the laundry itself, but the laundry room in this building always blows my mind. It's in a damp and dark basement of a building, and you always have to feel around the wall to find the switch. It really would be a great location for a horror movie, to be honest. So I go down and throw the laundry in the car and everything goes well. Come back in 40 minutes, throw it in the dryer, and so far nothing out of the ordinary. An hour later I return to the basement to get my things out of the dryer. Well, when I turn on the light, the dryer door is open, and my crap is just all over the floor, hanging out of the dryer and everything. And to top it all off, they were all still wet, which was the worst because I didn't want to keep going to the laundry because I'm a lazy piece of shit. In any case, normally I'd be like whatever because sometimes people open dryers and just don't close them, but it really looked like someone was rummaging through my stuff. Shrugging, I put my things back and then a sharp chill runs down my spine. Like it was so random, but I honestly felt like I wasn't alone. So I turned back to the elevator, because like I said, lazy shit. And all of a sudden I hear the sound of someone running madly up the stairs and across the room, almost like they're spotted or something. I take all my laundry back to my apartment and notice that I'm missing a few things. But I'm kind of passed out at this point, so I'm not in the mood to walk around looking for t-shirts. so I just forgot about it until... A couple of days later, I received an email from our landlord informing all residents that a homeless guy had not only broken into the building, but had sexually assaulted himself in the laundry room, then started a fire and walked around the building trying to break into people's unlocked apartments. So I guess this guy was going through my stuff, probably took something, did the hell knows what with it, and then for some reason started a real fire. I don't know exactly what he was doing there when I was there, but it's scary to think that this guy must have been only a few feet away from me. I would probably call it a creeping magnet. I meet weirdos all the time, and it's actually become a running joke I share with my friends and coworkers, telling them about the many creeps I encountered during my time in retail. All kinds of people come into my shop, and I'm very well known for my bright attitude and overly cheerful way of being, which is loved by my regulars and newbies alike. This is most likely a contributing factor to why I have so many weirdos, and probably my height. I'm actually a very short girl at 4'8", and look about 5 years younger than my 21 years. I'm also happy with how young I look, so that's probably another reason. But to the story. So today was like any other day. Just another normal day of me working in the store and checking out customers, stocking the shelves when I'm not in, and a normal day. However, at one point during check-in, I met a man with a large, dark beard, balding and wearing glasses when he walked in the door. He immediately smiled, and had that surprised look on his face that I came to know as, "Oh shit, I'm going to creep on that girl today, look. It's okay, I'm used to it, and I know how to behave." Eventually, after about an hour or two of being at the register, I pretty much cleared the store of my customers, and moved on to stocking up on candy. The man in front of the beard walks up to me with a smile and holds out a large white trash can. Excuse me? Right? I answer, taking my eyes off the box I'm holding in my stockings. Are there more of these in the back? This one doesn't seem to have a lid," he says, pointing to a large trash can in his hand. "Yes, I think so. I can check for you." I smile and am polite as always before turning away and heading to the warehouse. I notice him following me and think nothing of it, but as I walk, I look around the aisles looking for customers. It immediately catches my eye that the store is empty, and well, shit. It's probably just us in the store, I think to myself. Walking through the warehouse doors, I was quickly relieved that this guy was stopping at the entrance. "I'll be back soon, okay?" I say as I make my turn around some full rolltainers that, because they just got a truck, our warehouse is full of them. They are very tall and look like giant moving walls, but very heavy, mind you. However, being so small, I don't have to move them around much to go through them and see what's on them. So after just a minute, I made a little trail for myself with 3 to my right and left and in front of me, and I decided to give up looking for trash cans. Sighing, I go to turn around and inform him of my defeat, only to find that he was in my tiny path of walls, very tight for a man of his height standing right behind me. "Hey, did you find it?" "No, I don't think we have." I try to laugh and avoid acknowledging the dire situation, but I'm very aware of my surroundings. I'm in a very small area with walls behind me and sides towering over me, and this very strong man is standing in the way of my only way out. The room is very far from the customers, no cameras, no other employees in the store. I am practically helpless and increasingly afraid that this person is not moving to let me go. I announce that I have to go back to work in a good minute, but I can't get a word out before he says in that creepy, almost shy voice, "You're just the sweetest little thing, aren't you?" After a moment, I got scared and sensed evil intentions from this guy. I began to think to myself that this is how I will die. However, to my own surprise, I gasp without thinking. I just heard my call. He looks confused but doesn't move and then says, "What?" And I say, "I just heard my call. There are people ahead to check on and they are looking for me." I stand there nervously, knowing that none of us have heard the familiar sound of the office bell that I keep in the till. "Well, okay, what about my trash can?" he asks, taking a step forward but glancing at the trash can. Then again, thinking in a flash, I blurted out, I'll drop half the price, okay? It's okay." Laughing and trying to act like nothing is out of the ordinary, I slip past him, seeing as I open, and he turns, and I do my best to walk away pretending to be calm as I exit the warehouse and then rush to the front of the store once I'm out of sight. He left without buying a trash can, and I never saw him again that day. I don't know why he felt so presumptuous that he could just come up behind me like that, and the fact that he didn't let me get out for more than a minute or two is pretty weird. To be honest, I think the guy was not well thought out. So, let me start this story off by saying that I was an idiot. I was a drug addict, an alcoholic, anxiety-ridden, and definitely still my rock bottom. But because of that, I had no better judgment, no good judgment of character. I started hanging out with a very unpleasant crowd. Grunge, punk rock, likes to party, never had any money, destructive, impulsive. You will get a drill. My old friend Bob started hanging out with me more and more as the weeks went by. Bob worked as a pizza delivery boy and never washed his clothes. He had maybe 3 outfits, including a work uniform and only women's clothing. Women's clothing was watery or punk. I saw no shame in it. I even thought it was cool that he didn't care what other people thought about it. But it also meant he liked my clothes. So, as a little sister might do, he kept taking my clothes. Mind you, he barely showered either. Often he would even wake up before 5 p.m. to make it to work, jump off my couch, take a pack of my cigarettes without asking, mind you, and just run away. In the 4 months he's been in my house, I've literally seen him take a shower about 5 times. And his feet, those human feet, they were the worst smell I've ever smelled. Long after the situation was resolved and he was gone, my carpet also picked up that scent. I tried everything to remove it too, but unfortunately I left that house with its stench. And he hasn't paid anything, not a single bill, and he's never contributed anything to groceries or cleaning or anything. Nor was it in my lease. However, he somehow legally established residency in my home. It didn't bother me that much at the time. Like I said, I was at rock bottom and was basically just happy to have someone to show me off with. I considered him my stupid, annoying, smelly best friend, until it was enough for him. He started admiring me. Very quickly, he gave up on getting everything he needed in life for free. He saved all the tip money he made, and then just decided we were going to be together. Things got pretty awkward and got worse from there. I mean, when I had to come home from work, a friend's house, etc., he would cry and follow me to my room. To my damn room. I repeatedly ask why we can't just be together. For us to be best friends, we had to meet. Mind you, I wasn't attracted to him. I was going through a divorce at the time and I just didn't want to ruin our friendship. It got to the point where I would actually avoid going home and stay with my mother or friends because he would cry and follow me around trying desperately to convince me to be with him. I also often found him in my bed at this point, and he quit his job to have a better chance of seeing me, and I told him that if it kept up, I wasn't going to let him crash in there again. At some point, after avoiding him for several days, Bob really began to come out of his shell. He cornered me screaming, "I'm tired of you fucking women rejecting me. That doesn't happen anymore." And now I'm scared. I never saw him as a threatening personality, just a goofy character. Also, I know some of you might think I let him. But trust me, I didn't. He's been a friend for years, actually attended my wedding, and was well aware that I didn't have feelings for him. But now I was genuinely afraid of him. I asked him to leave and he was no longer welcome, and he just refused. He said by law he needs 30 days notice to be evicted, but when I spoke to the police they understood my situation but explained that he either needs to be evicted or may have to get a restraining order. So I filed a restraining order, which they immediately issued to me. But he just chose to ignore it. As soon as he left my house, I locked all the doors and windows, and when he returned I showed him the order, with which he was displeased. I tried to call the police every time he showed up, but he was always gone by the time they arrived. This door had shoe marks and cracks from all the attempts he made to open it. After these attempts, it never closed properly, and they were never able to officially service it because they supposedly just couldn't find it. I honestly think they probably tried once and then just gave up. I got them his plates, the addresses of his friend he was staying with, his previous job, everything they needed. I would stay up late listening to his car. It was very loud and easy to recognize. driving slowly down my road, and he just stared at me. Day and night I was just scared, looking out the window, always with my phone in my hand, getting ready. One time he even hid behind my front door. A mutual friend knocked, and then jumped out, pushed the door open, and entered. He even went so far as to send a Facebook message to my young underage nephew, who he had dated maybe once, to try to gain sympathy and convince him to make me change my mind, crossing even more obvious boundaries. Honestly, it was just a living nightmare. However, he eventually moved on to his next obsession, and I finally felt some peace. But a few months later, he was officially in our local news for trying to cut his girlfriend's throat and beating her until she passed out until a neighbor rushed him and he ran away. All I could think about was how could it be me? Apparently, free housing, food, cigarettes, and everything but a romantic relationship was not enough for him. He also earned casual and sexual relationships,